think it's time for us to have a proper chat about the role that teacher motivation plays in cultivating student motivation. You know, it's almost like I wish somebody wrote a book that described the cultivation of student motivation that didn't come at the expense of the teacher's motivation. Like, is there a way to do this to help young people care about the work of learning without actually going insane in the process? I would like this book to be written because I myself, in October of 2024, the time that I'm filming this video, am experiencing degrees of insanity, exhaustion, depletion, overstretching, that it seems like a book like that would really help. Now, of course, I am being facetious because I wrote that book, but I'm being serious because I am experiencing those things that I just described. I mean, I literally had so few goals this year. I wanted to just do the stuff in this book while also doing the stuff in this book with my 133 or so students. And I wanted to help other teachers do likewise. And I just wanted to write about the process, make videos about it. I thought it would be a great time. And it has been a really great time, don't get me wrong. But I'm also exhausted. So there's two things that I hope that you're already getting from this video. One being that if you are experiencing exhaustion in October-ish, that you'll realize that at least one other person with good intentions, with a sound-ish mind, has gone through what you're going through, or at least something like it. But the other thing that I hope you're getting is this little tiny question mark popping in your mind of, is there hope for me? Is there something that this guy's going to talk about that is going to help me? Because I think that there is. I think that we can improve our state before we get to the fall break or the Thanksgiving break or whatever is going to give us a relenting from our current full week after full week after full week after full week that we are in right now in the fall. I think that we can experience greater fulfillment, greater wholeness, greater health and restfulness even before we get to our breaks. But it's going to take some honesty. And then it's going to take some strategery. So first of all, we've got to realize whether we're trying to apply ideas from these books or the PD at the start of the year or the colleague down the hall, that teaching is not just hard for lack of strategies, for lack of helpful ideas, for lack of reliable practices that will over time produce fruit if we don't give up. Even with the answers to teaching difficulties that I have discovered for myself in the process of writing these books and trying to do what they say year after year after year after year, I still find teaching immensely difficult. I think for me, some of that has to do with the fact that I'm introverted. And for literally 6 hours a day, there are people coming at me with needs, expressed needs, unexpressed needs, expectations, expressed expectations, unexpressed expectations. They're coming to me in person. They're coming to me with their emails. So there's the introverted thing going on. And there's just the fact that the mind can only handle so much stimuli before it begins to break down. And none of us who are teaching experience that pre-breakdown amount of stimuli. By this point in the school year, we experience the breakdown amount. So what are we to do? I think what we're to do is to redirect our focus, to re-intend ourselves to do and attend to certain kinds of things and to ignore a lot of the others. And so one of the things that I want to invite you to think about is a strategy that I describe in The Will to Learn, the strategy of the mini-sermon from an apologist, winsome and sure. So what is an apologist, winsome and sure? Why do I insist on using such inaccessible language when describing this strategy in my book and to teachers? Well, because these words just are really useful words for what we are after. An apologist is someone who is making the case for something controversial. And the idea that school is good because school is good, that learning actually is good because learning is actually good, that is a controversial idea. That is not something that most people agree with in 2024. Most people think that school is pointless, that school is outmoded, that school is actually harmful to students, that school is a big old waste of time, or some variation of these types of negative attitudes about school. Those are the common ways to think about school in our world today. At least that's been my experience. And the trouble with bad attitudes is that they're usually rooted in some amount of truth, some amount of experienced life. And so it's very commonsensical for me to think about myself as a high school teacher as an apologist, as someone who is representing a thing that is controversial, school, and who has to believe and articulate winsomely and confidently that school is a good thing for all students to do, that school can be good for all students. But like even as I'm saying this, I'm getting exhausted because I'm picturing particular students that I teach for whom I currently see school being not a good thing. Every day it's like their spirit is dwindling away as class after class crushes them down, and then their lack of opportunity before this or readiness today, advantage in life, they are struggling, and school is just reinforcing the narrative for them that there's nothing here for them. Yeah. So here I think is the path forward when you're experiencing this type of thing, thinking about these kinds of stories. Could what you're offering be good? Could what you're offering be good? Is it possible that the writing that you're asking students to do, the problem solving that you're asking them to do, the knowledge building, the argumentation, the speaking, the listening, is it possible that these acts, these small little acts that comprise your lessons, that these could be bright spots in a student's day, that these could be moments of success, that apart from your class, the learning experiences that you design, they would not have access to? Is it possible that this week you could construct a series of lessons in which, maybe just for the warm-up portion of the lesson, you are inviting students to explore who they are, to explore their place in the world, to experience a sense of perspective, a sense of clarity that apart from the work of thinking that you have students do in your class just wouldn't be possible? I mean, in other words, is what you're offering actually good? And I know that this is a hard question because sometimes I look at my curriculum and I don't feel like it actually always is. Sometimes it seems detached from deeply meaningful topics. Sometimes it seems like it's not going to pay off for my students long term. I genuinely wrestle with these kinds of questions. But I think that wrestling, painful though it is actually part of why I'm glad that I'm a teacher. I'm glad that I'm a person who takes seriously the concerns that my students have, who takes seriously the responsibility to provide meaningful, impactful, growth-producing learning experiences while my students are with me. And, I'm also annoyed to be that person because it would probably be a lot easier, more comfortable, less effort if I wasn't. But I remember years ago when my children were brand new babies thinking, from now on, I want to be the kind of teacher that I hope that they'll have someday. And whether you're a parent of children or a parent of a dog, an aunt or an uncle, or just a thoughtful human being, there's just a caveat that comes with loving other people well. And that caveat is that it's hard, that there's soul searching, that there's difficulty. And through these hard things, we experience growth ourselves. So very practically, what I want to invite you to do, if you're in a period like I am, where you're just kind of exhausted, depleted, is to think anew, actually get out a piece of paper and write out, why is what you're asking your students to do actually a good thing? Do you ask them to write? Do you ask them to read? Are you asking them to learn new vocabulary? Are you asking them to read articles, to compose arguments? I want you to take a minute to just brainstorm by yourself. Why is this good? Think about those students who you're most concerned about and write about them. What would it mean if they were able to really engage with the work that you have on offer? How could their lives be different? Their experience of a human life be enriched if they were to actually grow toward mastery in your class this week? Step one, write about this yourself. Think about this yourself. Write about this. And then step two, in brief interactions, whether it's with an individual or with the whole class, explain to your students from the heart, briefly, but as clearly as you can, what you just wrote about. Make the case. Be an apologist. And as you do so, know that you, being a caring, thoughtful teacher who's got your soul invested in this thing, are likely to plant some seeds that you will never see produce fruit, but that will nonetheless do so. This is what it means to give a mini sermon as an apologist, winsome and sure. It's not about being perfect. It's not about having total maxed out levels of optimism or confidence. It is about being a person who wrestles with the meaning, the significance, the value of the work of learning that's done in your class, thinks deeper than anyone else about what that value is, and attempts as best they can to communicate that value to their learners. Do this for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and keep track of it as you do so. And then when you're done, I encourage you to write about what you've learned. Write about it. What did you say to students? Did you see any impact in yourself, in them? Just write about it. And as you do that, colleague, I believe, and as I do that, colleague, I believe that you and I are going to emerge stronger than we were before, clearer than we were before, more confident and settled than we were before. I'm not promising perfect energy levels forever, the end of frustration and on the brink burnout, but I am promising growth. This is what I'm going to do after I make this video. I'm going to go write. Will you join me?